Right, I'm just gonna get started here in a minute. We're gonna get started talking about Italian second homes. So we're gonna wait to see if everything's working right. If you can hear me, say hi in the chat. All right, cool. I see that it's basically the hour is started, and so let me go ahead and share my face. Just a second. All right, so we are live on Italian Tax Talk, and I am excited to share with you today's new subject. Last week we talked about owning a residence here in Italy and declaring Prima Casa as a tax, basically a tax benefit where you don't have to pay property taxes or some other community taxes. Anyway, today is still talking about those who are residents in Italy, but many of the things apply also to non-residents. Anyway, but this is our focus. We're going to try to stick with certain profiles of people, and so so people can understand who is being talked to. So if you own a property in Italy and you're living in it, and then you decide to buy a second property, this is who we're talking to today. Okay, so let's see what I got here. All right, so I actually prepared a PowerPoint. It's just gonna help me step through everything and help me stay organized. You can see I set things up a little bit differently here in my home. My office, the heater broke, so I have to do some temporary things, but this is actually working out really great. Going ahead on our subject today, we are talking about Italian taxes. So tax obligations of owning a second home in Italy. We're not going to talk about actually renting the property, just owning the property today. Okay, so what we'll talk about is, for example, the ineligibility of being able to take that Prima Casa benefit. Is just a completely different category. It's called secondary home, basically. And coming along with that is a set of taxes that you get to pay. Okay, and there are a number of other things that we're going to talk about as well, but we're going to talk about IMU, which is basically the property tax, and TASI, which is a set of taxes. They're like other taxes that are paid to the community for things like gardening and the lights of the community. Okay. There are some interesting things to know about these things, so as we step through, I hope to cover everything. If you haven't seen the other video about Prima Casa, most of these other things are still related to both. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Imposte di Registro, Imposte di Ipotecaria, Imposte Catastale, but Plusvalenza, for example, the capital gains, I might take a second and talk about that. All right, so first of all, we're going to start with IMU and TASI. Okay, we're going to talk about them together, and I just threw all this information on here for you so that you could see what's going on. Okay, for example, there's this thing called the Rendita Catastale. In America, you understand, like city taxes and county taxes, you have a valuation that's given to your property that is not necessarily the value of your property. It's usually like 75% less or something like that. Here they do a similar thing. It's usually about, it's supposed to say rendita, not reddito. Rendita is calculated based on about half of the perceived value, but this Rendita Catastale is another thing. It's a number that's calculated from the perceived value, okay? And so you can see I actually have the best way to find out what your Rendita Catastale is to actually do a visure. Oh man, I'm doing great today. Catastale. Let me fix it. Rendita. It doesn't matter, but it's nice. To do this visure, which is basically a control of the parcel and the rendita and like the size of the property, the category of the property. And so you can see it all right here. This property, and I'll show you in a second what A4 means. It has 6.5 vani, which is rooms, okay? In Italy, they use the comma for the decimal, so it's backwards. You can see on the euro 218, comma 20, that comma is 20 cents, okay? So my rendita for my home is 218 and 20 cents. And what does that mean? No, that's not the taxes you pay annually, okay? It's actually the number that they use to calculate what you'll pay annually. All right, so we have, we're going to move on. What we're trying to do is understand what we're needing to pay for IMU and TASI, because IMU is property tax, and TASIs are taxes for the community for whatever gardening they do. Not every community will make you pay TASI. For example, a small community will not require it. My community, I believe, doesn't require it. I was looking at a document that they reported. It looks like big factories in my neighborhood have to pay some, but as far as principal homes, no, because there's not that much going on. There's not a lot of extra fee costs that can't be covered by something else, okay? So that's what TASI is. So looking at the categories, we have, this is in Italian, but you can see there's a big list of categories. We have A2 through A7, A1, A9 are special types of category, A10, offices and private study. But then there's group B's and C's and D's, and it goes all the way down to terreni, which is like terrain, okay? Not so hard to understand Italian sometimes. Even C6, garages, stables, they're all on this list. I'll show you right here. I've got it in English for just the A section. And this is the division of types of houses. And mine is popular housing, which real estate units belonging to buildings with construction features and finishes of modest level. Limited equipment, although indispensable. So what's the difference between mine and someone else's? Well, for example, let's look back here. The second, if we look back here, no, wrong one. No, I'll show you in a second, actually. I forgot I moved that picture. No, yeah, it was this one, A1, 8, and 9. So this category is right here, A1, 8, and 9. So stately housing, houses in villas, and castles. Okay, so that category are people that have some pretty nice homes or historical buildings. So they probably automatically consider deluxe housing, but deluxe can be any category as long as it fits the information that we shared last video about, you know, larger than 160 square meters, or a swimming pool, or 2 elevators for this, like a certain size of building. Those kinds of things create a deluxe property, and taxes are due. So a secondary home of popular housing, I would have to pay taxes if it's not my principal home, but actually a rental property or a second home that I just happen to have. Okay, so moving on. The point is that there are these online calculators. The best way to get understand how much to pay, because it's basically like, find this random number, use that to compare it to some other number in your community, and all of this is based off of a half value of your perceived property value. And it gets really, really, really confusing. Even using the online calculators, as you'll see in a minute, is a little bit difficult if you're not used to it. But the idea is you would come through and you would start with a category. I picked A4, which is A2 through 7. I would choose whether it's my Prima Casa or not. And we're not talking about Prima Casa, so we didn't select it. I put in my Rendita Catastale here, and you can search online, and there are other calculators or other ways of finding it. Then here is something that is, I'll be honest, a little unclear for me. I've left it blank because I'm in a small community, it doesn't apply. But the aliquota is tax. It's another word for type of tax. And it talks about per mille, and so it doesn't, per thousand. And so when you think of 9.8%, it doesn't seem like per thousand, but this calculator forced me to have a number higher than 2. So this is what came out. Now, I did find that number on my community declaration of the taxes for this purpose. So I feel like I did it correctly. And it talks about quota di possesso is how much is yours, how much do you possess. Like if between my wife and I, she actually owns 50 and I own 50. And this is kind of an interesting situation. If you don't have like a prenuptial agreement or something specifically registered here, they call it comuni di bene. I can't remember, in bene or di bene. But the point is that if you have it in common with each other, that means every property you buy, you each own half. And so if you lose half, she doesn't necessarily lose half. Anyway, so then there are these other agreements based on contract agreements, canone concordato. Now, I just left that blank because it's kind of an optional thing. And then there's a detraction for those larger properties here, but only in the case it's your first home. Anyway, so here we go, and we calculate that. And here's a link, for example, calcolotasi.it. Interesting, it's called Calcolo TASI, but it actually calculates IMU and TASI. So property tax and other taxes. Now moving on, the point is you enter all this information and make sure you have it all correct. And this is what I have. This is what my calculation came out to be. For example, on the left side, I believe it's the left for you, the left side, you see it says on the bottom, nessuna imposta dovuta per il 2019. It means that there is no tax due because I was doing it as if it was my Prima Casa that you can see up here. Okay, so I don't owe taxes, and it shows the detractions and things and the justifications. On the other side, I decided to pretend it was my second home, not my Prima Casa. And so if this home right here was my second home, based on the 9.8% that I saw on my community page, I would actually owe 360 euros annually. And from what I know, that's not very much. But I mean, when it comes down to other taxes like TARI and, well, I don't suppose those are comparable. Anyway, 360 euros is not a whole lot. Other communities I have my apartments in, I actually pay like 500 as opposed to 360. So this community just doesn't expect as much. There is a chance that I messed up on the calculation because I don't pay property tax in this property because it is my Prima Casa. But the calculators are not that complex. You just have to make sure you have the right numbers entered in there. You can always ask like someone to calculate it for you, but the calculators are all over the place, and you can try to do it yourself if you own property here. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Actually, you know what? Before we end this thing, I'm going to go back and address something about this Plusvalenza. Last week I said that there is a special situation that if you live in it for more than half the time, that you don't, even if it's longer than 5 years, you don't pay capital gains. Here, if it's a second home, if you sell it before 5 years is up, you're done. You pay capital gains, which is only 20%. But in comparing it to your income tax as opposed to paying it as a Plusvalenza, you should probably take the capital gains, the Plusvalenza option, because 20% is a lot lower than 26 or 27 or whatever is the lowest rate for most income earners. 30, it's tiered just like in the US. But anyway, so if you own a deluxe house in the Prima Casa situation from last week, you paid these taxes anyway. So as a second home, you get the lucky opportunity to pay property taxes and other taxes. And that's the biggest difference. The one thing I wanted to share as I leave today, subscribe if you like the video, but before I go, be careful when you buy property here. What I'm used to in the US, for example, is that every 6 months you receive a notice, or they let you know when to pay, right? Every 6 months. Here, they won't tell you until it's maybe years down the road and you didn't pay. They'll do it like, they'll check their books later on, and they'll be like, well, that guy didn't pay his taxes, let's charge him a fee too. Okay, so you got to stay on top of it here. Honestly, we were caught off on our first investment property expecting a bill to come in the mail, and it never did. And so we contacted them directly, and luckily they didn't require, because we contacted them, they didn't require us to pay a late fee. So that was nice. Anyway, next week, taxes on rental properties as a resident. And I am going to get to a point where we talk about non-residency things, because there are just slight differences, but most of it is heavily relatable, okay? In Italy, you pay taxes if you're a resident here, or if the money is derived from property here, okay? So those are kind of the main rules on when you owe Italy taxes. And to be a resident, you have to live here for more than 6 months. All right, so yeah, here you see it's called cedolare secca. Cedula? No, cedula. I don't remember. Yeah, my Italian's rusty. Versus IRPEF. And IRPEF is basically just saying your ordinary income. You have a choice which one to follow. And there are specific rules for both. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for checking this out. This was a fun, where did he go? I was going to say bye. Where am I? There I am. Okay, here I am. That probably would have been more interesting if I was actually on the video, and I'll probably deal with that next time. I didn't want to take any valuable real estate on the screen. But go ahead and subscribe to the video if you like learning about taxes here in Italy. We keep in touch, because I don't know if you caught it, but I'm actually heading down to Sicily on Saturday, and I'm going to be doing some video down there about a special situation where they're selling houses for €1. And I'm going to get down to the bottom of what the hidden fees are, and just to let you guys know what you can expect if you choose to go that route. All right? So again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you later. If I can hang up. Later.